Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Cole. It's Wednesday evening, June 19th. We're going to call this the announcement for week 7 of Political Science 1013 for the summer 2024 term. We're coming to you a little early. We've got 10 days left in the term, roughly. Well, a few more than that after the final exam to get grades compiled. But we're about 9 or 10 days from our final exam. So we're going to get this announcement out now and another one over the weekend, and that will be number 8. And I don't know whether I will be doing any more than that to wind things up. Maybe a very short announcement before the final exam. I don't know. Anyway, everybody, a series of announcements went out this morning after exam 3 on yesterday. We'll be covering Units 7 and 8 for the final exam on the Supreme Court and Congress. We're going to go ahead and get a discussion in this coming weekend, Friday and Saturday, which will be more pertinent to the Unit 8 material on Congress rather than Unit 7. I wanted to go ahead and get that in because next week we've got the final exam and your term papers. And we're going to be getting a message out about an extra credit assignment based on the presidential debate. And once again, everybody, let me stress, what you may want to do is get your paper in if you're doing one, take the final exam, which will be Friday the 28th, I believe, coming the day after the debate. Then, to complete the extra credit assignment, you might want to go back and look at a replay of the debate on YouTube or one of the television networks' websites. I'm sure that will be readily available soon after the debate. That might be the best way for us to handle that. Please go ahead and start taking a look at class notes for Units 7 and 8. Have 7 first, although you may want to take a peek at 8, because our discussion this weekend will be Congress related. It has to do with Senator Lankford from Oklahoma. We've included in the announcement a link to one short piece about what Senator Lankford was trying to do, going back to January. And you were asked to discuss whether you think he did the right thing or not. And everybody, think about not just what you think about the immigration issue, but in general what you think of the idea of Senator Lankford working with Democratic and independent senators. See, he caught some flack about that. Some people apparently didn't want him to do that. It wasn't ultimately successful. But in any case, let me say a few words about Unit 7 on the Supreme Court, and the next announcement will deal more with Unit 8. Right now, Unit 7 deals with the Supreme Court. We begin by talking about the judiciary system in America in general, okay? The state courts and federal courts below the Supreme Court level, mostly concerned with the United States Circuit Courts of Appeals. Generally, cases come to the Supreme Court on appeal from either a state Supreme Court or a United States Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, this only reflects a very narrow slice of all the cases that are brought before the United States judicial system, the local, state, and federal levels. The Supreme Court will try to single out the ones that are most politically significant to the country as a whole and not just the parties to the case. So they may have a couple thousand cases appealed to them. It's completely up to them, their discretion, which cases they're going to take, and they may only take 50 or 100 per term. Okay, we talk about the way the Supreme Court works, schedules cases for oral argument, and then once oral arguments have completed, the court will meet periodically in conference to discuss the cases that have been argued orally already. Most of the work of deciding a case consists of going through very, very lengthy legal briefs that will be filed by the parties to the case and other parties acting as friends of the court. And the justices have their law clerks to help them with all of this. Okay. Much of the work consists of going through the legal briefs. The oral arguments are really very short, generally an hour, 30 minutes for each side. And generally there will be one opinion reflecting a majority of the court. There may be concurring opinions and dissents. Sometimes concurring opinions are concurrences in name only. They're very often dissents in very important respects. So in a dissent at one point, the view expressed there can become the view of the court as a whole in the future. So dissents can be important. We emphasize the politics of the Supreme Court, although it would be insisted that other things being equal, politics ought to be left out of it. These are legal, not political institutions, but in this day and time that becomes very, very difficult to sustain, practically speaking, because of many issues that have arisen that have been thrown into the laps of the court, including but not limited to abortion, about which we're going to have quite a bit to say. Suffice it to say, whenever there's a vacancy, and it's up to the president to make a nomination, which the Senate then has to decide whether or not to confirm, and the political views of the nominees always will be a topic of discussion, at least in contemporary times. It's very, very difficult to avoid. The nominee generally will be fairly close to the political views of the president, or at least that's the reputation that the nominee will be stuck with. Very, very difficult for someone to accede to the Supreme Court nowadays without being described in public and in the press as either liberal or conservative. It comes from the fact that elected officials from one part or the other have the say over who's going to get on the court. The president has to make the nomination. The Senate has to decide whether or not to confirm. In most cases, they're confirmed. In some very, very prominent cases, sometimes they have not been. Now, we mention the possibility that a nomination could be a form of extension of political recognition to segment a demographic group within the population, be it women or members of one or other racial or ethnic group. We go through some of the very, very acrimonious episodes, politically acrimonious, that have surrounded nominations to the Supreme Court in recent times, especially the 3 nominations that President Trump made that were then confirmed. 3 of the 9 on the court now were Donald Trump appointees. So you'll have quite a bit to look at with regard to all that. The court is a difficult branch to check and balance. We say that checks and balances apply to all the branches, the executive, legislative, and the judicial branch, but the Supreme Court is almost completely independent. Justices serve on good behavior. That is, they serve for life unless they decide to resign or quit, or if they pass away in office. They can be impeached and removed, but no Supreme Court justice has been successfully impeached and removed. Sometimes we see constitutional amendments directed at particular Supreme Court decisions. We mention a couple of examples of that in the class notes. But perhaps the easiest way to check and balance the Supreme Court is to nominate for the president to nominate new justices with views perhaps different from those that they are replacing. And Donald Trump most definitely tried to do that. Now, we conclude this set of class notes with a discussion of a few so-called landmark decisions of the Supreme Court, decisions that had broad political significance, such as Brown versus the Board of Education from back in the 1950s. More recently, the Citizens United case, the Obergefell case regarding same-sex marriage. The one case that was always on our list going back to the 1970s was Roe versus Wade, which we still discuss in the class notes, but that's now been overturned by the Dobbs decision going back just a couple of years ago. And we discuss what went on with the Dobbs case in considerable detail, and there were several opinions issued, and we try to go through each of those. But to put it in a nutshell, Roe versus Wade was overturned, and the court decided it would no longer recognize a constitutional right to an abortion. And so some states now permit it, others do not. Others rush to put limitations to one extent or another on the procedure in the wake of that decision. That's, of course, very important, highly politically significant, and we go into it in some detail at the end of the class notes. The Dobbs decision, I believe the date on that was 2022, just a couple of years ago now. All right, everybody, will have at least one more of these in which we will discuss Unit 8 on Congress. Remember, discussion this weekend, Friday and Saturday. I believe that's the 21st and 22nd. Term papers are due on Thursday the 27th, which is the day of the presidential debate. The final exam will be the following day. I'm going to get an announcement out about an extra credit assignment for the debate. You may wish to complete that assignment after you take your final exam. All right, then. So we will be talking to you once again this weekend and possibly one more time after that. Study hard, take it easy. I hope you will take part in the discussion this weekend. Remember, you get a bonus of 25 points if you have taken part in all 5. So there are many of you who are going to need to do that, and that will help you a great deal if you can pick up those points. So we'll talk to you again this weekend. Good luck, study hard, and take it easy.